Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mindfulness Podcast. This is Ankita Biani, your host. Today, for episode 2 of the Mindfulness Podcast, we have a special guest to help us understand more about factors that can degrade cognition and how mindfulness can help in improving our cognition and well-being. Our guest speaker, Dr. Ekaterina Denkova, is a research assistant professor in the Division of Cognitive and Behavioral Neuroscience in the Department of Psychology at the University of Miami. Dr. Ekaterina Denkova is also a cognitive and affective neuroscientist. Using brain and behavioral methods, she broadly studies the neural basis of cognitive and affective processes and their trainability with mindfulness training. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Ekaterina Denkova. Hello, Dr. Ekaterina. Thank you so much for being our guest in this second episode of the Mindfulness Podcast. Today, we would like to address what factors can degrade cognition and why mindfulness is very important for helping improve our cognition and well-being.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to have this conversation with you. I think the first aspect that probably we are all aware is that under some circumstances, we start to lose focus. Our attention is not where it's supposed to be. And then sometimes that might not have big consequences, but sometimes it's very consequential. For instance, I think probably everyone can relate to the example, you're reading a book and at some point your mind is somewhere else and you realize that you don't remember what happened in the last 2 pages and you need to go back. And I think in that situation, it's not consequential. You just turn a few pages, you read over, and you're back on track. That's fine. But sometimes during a lecture, during an exam that you're taking, you need to be focused. Your attention needs to be 100% on the task that you're doing. And most of the time, it will be there. Your attention will be on the task. But other times, your mind will go away and start wandering. And when it's during during a test or a lecture that it's important, that might have big consequences of how you'll perform later on, because there is evidence that people who are not on the task, they have degraded cognitive performance or attentional performance. So what are the circumstances as well that can make our mind go away and wander? One of the key factors is stress. When we are stressed, our mind goes away. We start to think or ruminating or stressing about, how my grades will be. Would I be successful? And that kind of overwhelming and thinking about something that may happen or something bad that happened may have an impact, may degrade your attentional focus. And then this will have the consequences on the performance. You might have lower performance on the test that you are taking, or you might not remember that lecture, and it's an important lecture. So I would say, while we need our attention to be focused on the task at hand, the task that we are doing, there are some situations, and most of the time, our attention is very fragile, and it will move from the task at hand to some totally unrelated thoughts, and we may feel stressed about that. And so mindfulness training can be one very promising way to mitigate those negative impacts of off-task thinking or of stress. And maybe here I can have a short example. It's from a study that we did last year during COVID, and it's still not published, but we started looking at the data, and it's very interesting that undergraduate students, meaning students at the university, those who are having frequent intrusions about COVID, like thoughts about COVID, are those who are also reporting more mind wandering, meaning more off-task thoughts while they need to focus on an attentional task. And this speaks to the fact that for individuals who are thinking about stuff that it's stressful and kind of negative experiences, that might have very bad impact on or even trigger more off-task thoughts during an important attentional task. And I would say, so that's kind of on the bad side of things. You know, we have that powerful tool, attention, and at the same time, attention can be fragile because our mind can go to things that are totally unrelated to what we're doing. But at the same time, there are ways that we can train attention to be present, to be at the moment. And not only that, but be aware when the mind goes away so that we can return attention back to the task at hand. And I think that tool is mindfulness training. So cultivating mindfulness skills can help with that very important feature of noticing when our mind goes away and it's not focused on the task at hand, and gently return it back to the task that we are currently doing. And so that's one aspect of how we think mindfulness is important for all those cognitive capacities that are primary for any domain. We need to pay attention. Attention is kind of a basic skill, and we need to pay attention in everything that we are doing. Let's say during a lecture, during a conversation as well, when we're interacting with people, we need to pay attention to what they're saying and be present for them. And when our mind goes away, we are even not paying attention to the person in front of that. And can I give you a fun example about that?
Yes.
Okay. So we did a very cool study. So we were showing faces to people, and people just had to look at the faces. And every time they see a face, they need to press a button. But from time to time, the face was inverted upside down. And when the face was inverted upside down, we asked them not to press a button. So very simple task, but at the same time, very boring. You're seeing faces, press every time when you see a face. If the face is upside down, don't press. It's an attention task. It requires you to sustain that capacity, attentional capacity to pay attention to what is happening in front of you. And at the same time, we were asking people from time to time, were you paying attention to the task? Yes or no? And interestingly, when people were saying that they're not paying attention to the task, we've seen a brain signature, if I can call it so. So the brain response typically to faces, it's a specific wave when we are doing recording. What we noticed that it was attenuated, meaning when people were having off task thoughts, when they were not paying attention to the faces, literally that means that they were even not seeing those. So it's kind of a perceptual decoupling. They were not paying attention to the faces. So that's why I'm saying it's very important. Attention is very important even for our personal, interpersonal conversations, and paying attention to each other. Because if our mind starts to wander, we're even not noticing the faces, meaning the people around us anymore.
I strongly agree, Dr. Ekaterina, about attention, and I think it is very important to always be able to redirect attention. I'm also wondering if you have any suggestions, ideas, tips, or recommendations on short practices that help us build our mindfulness awareness about our attention and redirect it back whenever we start to wander.
Yes, I think that currently there's so many apps that are available, and I know most of the time people are time pressured. You know, they're, oh, I'm busy about that. But I think it should be something that we need to consider the same time we're considering, you know, physical exercise. We need to exercise in order to maintain our physical health. And it's not something that we can do once and then be, oh, okay, I did it once, I did a mindfulness practice, now my attention will be good forever. I think unfortunately it doesn't work like that. We need a sustained mindfulness practice. And for people who are novice, of course, they can start, you know, with shorter focus attention practices that can be found in any available now, you know, phone applications, and then little by little building, you know, building those skills, because it's a skill and we need to maintain that skill. Uh, and that's also something that we are seeing in our studies. So it's not only about receiving, let's say, a mindfulness training. It's really about practicing and completing those mindfulness exercises of 10 to 15 or even 20 minutes a day, so that we can really cultivate and maintain that skill. And I think it's pretty much, it's a very good parallel with physical exercise. It's will not be, we cannot maintain our muscles or a body if we are not exercising every day. If we just do it once and then we are, oh no, I'm fine now, I will stop, we'll see that our physical health will not be at the same level. And I think it's the same with attention. In order to maintain our focus, to be aware when our mind goes away, we need really that sustained mindfulness practice. And finding, you know, finding the time when it's good for us. I would say even at the beginning, experimenting. Is it good for me when I wake up in the morning and I'm taking those 10 minutes for me to do mindfulness, let's say to do focus attention, or it would be better in the evening when I'm going to bed, and let's say I'm doing then another type of mindfulness exercise such as body scan. So I think people can kind of try and see what works best for them.
Thank you, Dr. Ekaterina. I strongly agree. And thank you so much for your speech and your words. They're very helpful in understanding the importance of attention and how we can redirect it through the help of mindfulness, and why mindfulness is just as important as physical exercise and why it should be done daily. We hope you enjoyed episode 2 of the Mindfulness podcast, and please like and subscribe and spread the word so more can understand and enjoy mindfulness practices and stay in tune with themselves. Thank you everyone for joining. And thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Please stay in tune for our next episode and hope to see you then.